Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 368, and today's date is May 16, 2014, and the title of this episode is Central Bankers Are Strategically Maneuvering to Cover Up This Economic Collapse with War. And we can see when we look around the world, this is exactly what they are doing. We have flashpoints all around the world, and they involve the United States and the central bankers. We see out in Japan, we have the skirmish over the Senkaku Islands. We have China and Vietnam. China now and Philippines. Philippines are protesting because China is now drilling in disputed waters because there is lots of oil under the ocean in that area. We see already out in Ukraine, the United States, NATO is in this area. They are pushing their agenda forward. They do not want peace. They're continually intensifying the anti-terrorism forces to push back the people in the regions, even though they had a referendum to decide if they were autonomous or not. They pretty much really don't care, and they are pushing the agenda forward. We see in the Middle East right now, there are troop buildups in Italy right now to go into Libya because we understand that the Libyan government is completely falling apart, and they made a call out to the international community, and of course the United States answered, and they are getting ready and building up troop and military assets to go into Libya, and they've given the government there in Libya 2 months to get everything under control, or the United States is coming in, and that will be that. Iraq is receiving military assets. They're receiving Apache helicopters. Military personnel are on the ground training soldiers because the Iraqi people are rising up. And we have to remember, all these people in the Middle East, the United States calls them, and the corporate media calls them Al-Qaeda. They call them terrorists. But of course, these are the people of the country. They want the private Western Central Bank out of their country, and they want the United States out, and they want their country back. Just like in Ukraine, all those people who criticize, go against the governments, they are automatically turned into terrorists. They are no longer everyday citizens. They are classified as terrorists, and this happens all over the place. We see the propaganda with Nigeria, how the United States wants to bring in forces into this area. They have drones scouting the area of Nigeria right now. Of course, we understand that Nigeria has plenty of petroleum, natural resources, gold, and China is there pumping in billions of dollars into the infrastructure in that region. We also understand right now that in Kenya and Sudan, they have a terrorist warning around the Nairobi area because Kenya is making the deal with China to build a rail link to all the African nations. And of course, the United States is not going to let this happen. They're not going to let China in. So they use the propaganda that there's terrorists running around. They're telling the people, do not travel to this region. And this is the same playbook, and this is what they always do every single time. So it is spreading all over the world at this point, and it's going to continually spread and be pushed forward. Why? Because they need to provoke a country into starting something, and they will continually provoke until either someone does something, or the United States central bankers will make it look like these countries did something and then go in. They're building up the case in Syria at this time. There are thousands upon thousands of paid mercenaries on standby. There are teams in Syria right now preparing for some type of mission. Right now, the president says that Assad has no future in Syria. They kicked out the people in the United States. They closed the embassies. All government officials were asked to leave. The paid mercenaries are now the acting or the new government that is coming in. They are recognized by the United States. And we can see all the military assets are being filtered down into Jordan. They are getting prepared and ready for a strike. And we can see that other nations are joining in at this time. We see England, France, Israel, the Arab nations, Italy. They're all joining in to make this push into Syria. And these are all the flashpoints. They are building this up and they're doing it incrementally over time. I hate to say this, but the central bankers of the United States, they don't move very quickly. And I know everyone's like, oh, when are they going to do it already? They do it very slowly because it has to look like the other country or the other people or anyone else is actually doing it, and it really has nothing to do with the United States. And if you ever listen to what they say, the United States has a hands-off, we're not getting involved. But they're completely involved. They have paid mercenaries in all of these countries, provoking, and they make it look like they have nothing to do with it whatsoever. But we're going to see this agenda is going to escalate as time goes on, and it's going to really move forward. Now, we understand that the United States is placing sanctions on individuals in Russia and on some companies. And it really has no effect whatsoever at this time. But Germany, they came out with a paper on what has been happening. And the Europe's showdown with Moscow over Ukraine is already having a major impact on German business in Russia, and imposing economic sanctions would cause lasting damage to the industry. The paper from the German-Russian Chamber of Foreign Trade, a group representing 800 companies that provides support to German firms operating in Russia, underscores the extent of a concern among German businesses over the Ukraine crisis. Deeper economic sanctions, which means if they place sanctions on the country of Russia, it would lead to a situation where contracts would increasingly be given to domestic firms, projects would be suspended or delayed by the Russian side, and Russian industry and politicians would turn to Asia, in particular China, the paper says. It says the loss of market share for German and European firms would be long-term and sustainable, causing irreparable damage to Germany's competitive position in Russia. The paper says this would lead to job losses like we've never seen before in Germany. So we can see they are being very careful in how they're placing these sanctions on Russia. Because if they go all out, and I know yesterday I said they were looking at new sanctions that were going to be applied to certain sectors, that it was going to make Russia bleed. But I'm telling you, this is going to have a boomerang effect, especially on Germany and the European nations, and of course the United States, because we're all interconnected, and the European and the United States economies are very, very fragile. One hiccup will bring the system completely down, and this is why they've been very, very careful in what they've been doing. Now, here in the United States, we can see the unemployment rate is at 6.3%, and they think it's going to come down even further. And of course it is, because when you're manipulating the calculation, you can do whatever you want. You can keep the illusion alive, you can play with the numbers, and you can say, hey, look, unemployment's at 6%. And I don't know why retail is closing more stores, and I don't know why people aren't buying houses, because when we really come back to what's real and what's not real, we can see that if people had real jobs, retail would be booming. Real estate would be booming. Manufacturing would be booming. Once they get to 5% or 5.5%, it's going to be pretty hard to explain why everything's still falling apart. I mean, we're at 6.3 right now. And I mean, if they drop it another 0.4% because we know elections are coming up and we're heading into the 5 range, how are they going to explain that nothing is working? Retail is declining. Real estate is declining. Manufacturing is declining. I mean, it doesn't even make sense anymore what they're doing. And what we're seeing for the first time is real hourly wages decline for the first time since 2012. And this is not a good sign, because everyone believed that, don't worry, hourly wages are going to keep up with inflation. But what we're actually seeing is salaries and hourly wages are declining right now. They're not moving up with the cost of everything else. And this is why you see a lot of retirees and other people out there getting second jobs, because they're on retirement. Inflation is going up. They're going out to get the part-time job. That's not keeping up with inflation. And then they have to go out and get another part-time job because they're not getting the raises in the hourly rate right now. And it's making it very difficult for them to survive. Now, in the corporate media today, and I saw it all over the place, They're saying that housing starts and permits are up. It's fantastic. We're in a rebound. But when you look through the crap and the main headline and you really look at what is going on, it's not single-family homes. That's not what's been pushing this up. The rental market, of course, because people can't afford homes, they don't have the disposable income that they've been saving in their savings account. They don't have the credit, and they lost 38% of their wealth during 2008. Plus, they have, the bad credit because of the foreclosures and the short sales. And what they're seeing right now is that they're trying to convince us of is that, oh my God, look, housing permits is back on, it's increasing, it looks like the housing market is rebounding. Good days are ahead of us, but when you look at this, it's 40% spike in multifamily units, and a lot of these hedge fund investment companies have been building these multifamily units to rent out. They've been buying them in cash. And the problem is they're building so many that they can't even rent them. And what we're going to see is that as when this market comes crumbling down, they will completely fall apart. And the market will fall apart, and all these will be completely empty. Because if we really look at this, multifamily dwellings for rentals, and Blackstone and other hedge fund investment companies who are paying in cash have been building these, and this is up by 14.4%, and they're renting these out, which is driving the price up of real estate. And this is why we see prices at the point, but they're starting to decline now. But if we look at single-family homes, the starts are negative 3.2%. So the American family who is going out to buy these homes, it's not happening. We are not seeing a rise in single-family home permits. They're not building anymore. It's actually decreased. So this whole thing is a corporate government headline to make everyone believe that real estate is still recovering when it's not. And they're pushing this illusion forward because the Fed, James Bullard, is out there, and he says the U.S. economy is within the sight of the Federal Reserve's inflation and employment goals and is expected to grow at a robust pace for the rest of this year. We are going to see growth like you've never seen before, and everything is going to be okay. They are pushing the illusion forward, and we have to flash back to 2008 in January when Bernanke was out there, and he said that the Federal Reserve is not currently forecasting a recession. The economy is slow right now, but we see fantastic growth in the next half of 2008. And it's very unbelievable how the same exact thing is going on right now. How they're telling us that they're right on track, there's no recession, and the second half really looks great. And I'm going to tell you, through the summer, we might see this bump because spring and summer are hot for real estate. They will pump it up as much as they possibly can with cash inflows, and then after that, we're going to see a drastic decline. Now, don't get me wrong, this pump up is not going to look like, oh wow, look at this. I mean, prices went up 100% from what it was in the winter. We're going to see a little bit, but they're going to play on this and make it seem that real estate is really on this track of recovery, and it will not be. Now, of course, Obamacare, which is the Affordable Care Act, they've been telling us that, oh, this is affordable, everyone needs to get it. But what we are seeing right now, reports are coming out, that 2015, the Affordable Care Act is really not that affordable. People's rates are going to go up between 10 and 11.7%. So already we're seeing this is going to become out of reach for most Americans at this time. They're going to look at the insurance and go, whoa, what is the premium? What's my deductible? I can't even afford this. I thought this was supposed to be affordable, and it's turning out exactly what we thought it was going to be. We thought it was going to be a disaster. We thought that people weren't going to go for it, and most of the people buying it are those people who had their insurance canceled that had no choice but to go onto the exchanges. The uninsured people and the youth, not even touching it. It is a complete disaster. And again, I said this many times, where were our leaders to show us this was great for the American people? It was great for the American people, but it wasn't great for Congress and the Obama administration, because they were all exempt from this. They did not show us that they were signing up. They didn't show us, yes, I'm taking the policy. Well, if they're not going to take it, we sure don't want it either. Now, China is out in the disputed South China Sea, and many countries are fighting over this area: Vietnam, Philippines, Japan, and right now, a senior Chinese general says his country's oil rigs will continue drilling in contested waters despite increased tensions in this area. They have every right, and this area that they're drilling in has a huge deposit of oil and gas. And of course, we know that Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines, they all want it too. This is off the coast of China, and this is a flashpoint right now. And they're having in the Philippines, all of a sudden they're having protests against China because they're building and creating this oil rig out in that area. Now, a couple reports ago, we discussed how all of a sudden, Joe Biden's son became one of the directors on the Burisma Ukraine gas company. And what we come to find, and that was just a coincidence, right? Joe Biden visited Ukraine. We had a coup d'etat in Ukraine. The United States is pumping billions of dollars into Ukraine, and it was just a coincidence that his son all of a sudden became the director, one of the directors of this Ukraine gas company. Now we find out that John Kerry's friend, Mr. Archer, who was an advisor to Kerry's presidential campaign in 2004 and co-chaired his National Finance Committee. Guess what? He is also joining the board. So can this really be a coincidence where the United States government had a coup d'etat? They put in a puppet regime. They're pumping billions of dollars into Ukraine, and Joe Biden's son and John Kerry's friend just so happened to be on the board in Ukraine. I think this was completely all set up. They knew exactly what they're doing. This is part of their plan to make lots of money for themselves. That's all they care about, and this is why they were in Ukraine and doing this in the first place, to put Ukraine on the EU system, have it join NATO, get their own people in, make tons of money. These are what all our government officials do. They do it for themselves. Even though it's their friends or their son, believe me, somehow, some way, they're getting a kickback. They're getting something siphoned off into a private account that no one can trace. And there is always a reason for what they're doing. Now, of course, McCain is out there, and he's saying that the United States should provide more military aid to Ukraine government. We have military assistance plans with at least 50 countries. It would not be an earth-shaking or a new kind of thing to give these people some ability to defend themselves. So let's send them military assets, weapons, airplanes, tanks. We need to help them out. We're doing it for 50 other countries. Let's do it for Ukraine. I mean, we took over all these other countries and inserted puppet regimes. Why not do it here? Let's start a war. Let's do it. Yeah. So you can see what's going on here. They are pushing this agenda forward. Government officials, they don't care if there's a war or not. They want war. They like pushing war. And like I said many, many times over, if they want war so bad and they believe it in their heart, they need to be on the front lines leading the American people. Now, right now we understand that Donetsk and Lugansk, they had a referendum. They said we are autonomous right now. We seceded from Kiev. We are not part of Ukraine. Well, what they're saying right now is absolutely not. You are not separate and apart. And Kiev have listed the self-proclaimed republics of Donetsk and Lugansk as terrorist organizations. So the people living in these regions, the ones who voted, are now terrorist organizations. The two so-called People's Republic in Donetsk and Lugansk regions are terrorist organizations which have a clear hierarchy, financing, and channels of weapons supplies. Criminal cases have been launched to investigate the formation of the terrorist organization. So what they are doing right now is they are not stopping with their agenda. There's no peace talks. They're intensifying their anti-terrorism program, and they will not stop. They want this to go into war somehow, some way. They will not back off. They don't want to have peace. That is not in their nature. They understand the economy is coming down. They know they need to start something someplace, the Middle East, Syria, Central Africa, out near China in the Pacific, near Russia, and this is why they've been moving the military assets and encircling China and Russia at this time. And they're having the huge buildup of forces in Jordan and Qatar, and they are getting ready to mount a major event that will occur very soon. Now, in Lebanon, it looks like they're having a very difficult time electing a new president. Well, of course they are. They don't want the puppet regime in there. And every time they bring in another candidate or they try to have the elections, the people just don't want that candidate. Now, the United States is out there saying that the Iran nuclear talks, they are too slow of a pace, and this worries the high-level U.S. insiders. And they're worried because of what has been going on, and time is short because the interim deal runs out in July, and they need to get over this hump that they're trying to have a dialogue about. And this is a very difficult dialogue, which of course nobody knows about, and also this interim deal that they have, we have to remember, is under lock and key. The president will not let unauthorized people see it. It's not classified, but you have to sign in. You can't bring a camera phone. You can't make a photocopy. You have to leave it in the room, and you have to be authorized to go in and take a look at it. And like I've always said, this deal is to get and infiltrate the banks of Iran to place all their natural resources on the U.S. dollar. And I believe this is what they've been trying to do. And when this interim deal runs out in July and they don't have a deal, this is why they've been demonizing Iran all along, saying they're helping with terrorist acts, they're creating nuclear weapons, they're keeping that propaganda alive because they understand that this interim deal is coming to an end in July. Now, we understand the United States and France and other nations are playing up the chemical attacks from Syria. We understand that John Kerry saw the raw data, and yes, he agrees with France that it definitely came from Assad, and they blame this on China. They provided the gas to Syria, and Syria, carried out the attack. And what's happening right now is China is saying, whoa. We did not sell any type of chlorine gas or cylinders to Syria. Take a look at the logo on the canisters. Whoever did this copied our logo but didn't do it correctly. The engraving is wrong. So these are forged and copied. So someone planted these, and it's not from us, China. And the China North Industries Group Corporation, or Norinco, said the logo printed was not the same standard of engraving that they usually do on their cylinders and the products they make. And they're saying that this is completely illegal, and they're going to take legal action against those people who've duplicated our product. So the people who, and we know who they are, it's CIA, it's the FBI, it's the United States government who did this. They took it, they tried to replicate it, they messed up, and now they're caught. Because they were trying to implicate China and Syria together, because you have to remember they are demonizing all the countries that don't have a private Western central bank. It's North Korea, China, Russia, Iran, Syria, Brazil, soon Argentina, Venezuela. You can see what is happening right now, and right now they have been caught again. Now, Kerry is out there and he's questioning the legitimacy of Syria's presidential election in June. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has questioned the legitimacy of Syria's upcoming presidential election, saying it is a fraud on democracy, not like the one in Ukraine where they put a puppet regime in there and they already picked out the puppet regime that they're going to have as candidates, and the people aren't going to really, vote for anything. Not like that one at all. Together, we are unified in saying that Assad-stage elections are a farce, Kerry said. Our teams, now get this is what Kerry said, our teams are going to come together in a very short order now to lay out a specific set of steps that we can and will take together in order to have a greater impact. Gee, I wonder what they're planning with all the troops they've been training, all the weapons. Do you think they're planning something? Yes, they are. He went on to say, I'm not going to discuss specific weapon systems or otherwise, except to say that every possible avenue that is available is going to be pursued by one country or another. So we can tell right now they are ready. The plan has been laid out. They're going to make their move in Syria. Now, what we're seeing right now is they've already been sending troops into Syria. And these are task force that they're sending in, and Syrian military forces have thwarted infiltration attempts by foreign-backed militants in operations around major cities of Homs and Aleppo. And what they're saying is that these government troops foiled an intrusion bid by armed militants in these areas. And they don't know what they were aiming for. They didn't know what they were doing, but they stopped them, and they haven't sent any more in at this time, and they're searching for more. And we knew yesterday that there's about 2,500 trained U.S. forces, and I believe this is the forces that are going in, the paid mercenaries, and they're going to try to either assassinate Assad or set something up. And what we're seeing as the reports are coming out, that yes, this is the case, and what we're seeing right now is rebels trained by the United States were advancing in southern Syria. 20,000 rebels were operating in southern Syria, including along the borders of Israel and Jordan. Rebels have overpowered the Syrian army in several sectors and could pose a threat to Damascus. If the rebels mobilize enough forces in the south instead of their traditional concentration on the northern fronts, they may perhaps be able to change the course of the battle for Damascus. For that to happen, though, they will need to redeploy additional forces to this region. And this is exactly what they're going to be doing. And what they've done already, and this is the start, as we can see, they're building this plan up, getting ready to do something. Rebels have already detonated 60 tons of explosives packed underneath a large Syrian army base, blowing a hillside hundreds of yards into the air. They dug about a 2,800-foot tunnel underneath the base, which is surrounded by rebels but has remained under government control. And right now, with everything that they're doing, they are setting up this event. Kerry just came out and told us that they are planning to do something, and they're going to make their move into Syria, because you have to remember they don't want these elections to go forward on June 3rd. They need to stop it before it happens. They need an event to get their forces into Syria, and they may need to make a huge, huge strike. And this is why they've been planning with all these countries. This is why they've been continually pushing this agenda forward. And their plan has been laid out. Now again, this initial plan could be some type of assassination attempt on Assad, or it could be an event around the world, because you have to remember they have been shipping explosives from the State Department to all unknown locations. Some think it's the embassies, some think it's in Kiev, but there's a lot of explosives, and we always have to remember that they've been telling us that Syria is a launching pad for terrorists. Reports have been coming out that these terrorists have been moving back into Europe coming into the United States. They break off into global pacts. They are bomb makers. The FBI, DHS, of course, lost contact, and they're trying to track these people. And we can see how they are maneuvering to create some type of an event to go into Syria at this time. They're pretty much out there telling us they're going to do it, and they're not stopping. Their agenda has always been the same. Their goal has always been the same. It's to get into Syria and remove Assad, then move into Iran, hopefully to bring China and Russia into the fold, because they know they have their back. They understand that war will start. They realize they need to do this because the economy is collapsing. It is not getting better. The debt around the world is reaching a point where it cannot be sustained anymore, and they're running out of places to push the debt into. Many of the countries already, and they're making deals with Russia and China, and there's like 80 nations that are now that are going to belong to the BRIC nations. We can see they are pushing to remove the dollar as the reserve currency. They realize this. They're not going to let this happen. They rather start a war than let another currency come into play, because they will lose all the money they're making. They would lose the power of creating and printing money. They would lose control. They are not going to let this happen. They will start a war in one of these areas. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.